This video is brought to you by my two books, Practical Music Theory for the Rock Guitarist and The Blues Guitar Bible. Want to learn about modes, harmony, scales, chord substitution and keys? Or maybe you're interested in supercharging your blues guitar rhythm and lead chops. Whatever you're interested in, I guarantee you will be hitting the fast lane to progress with either of these works. Both feature video demonstrations and tutorials, loads of tabs and jam tracks to play along with, and I promise you, everything is explained in crystal clear plain English. Check out the links in the description for more details. Hello chaps, welcome once again to John Robson Guitar Tuition. As always, I do hope you're well. That little jam there was me kind of playing to the chord changes a little bit, not that there were many. There was a section in A minor which also kind of had a little bit of the relative major of C major going on, and then it went, when the sort of power chords kicked in, to F major and its relative minor of D minor. So I'm kind of bouncing between C major, A minor pentatonic and F major, D minor pentatonic. And many people will use something like the caged system to basically navigate those changes from one scale to another, one pentatonic to another. I've said on many occasions, and I stand by it, that I think the caged system, for me, is a very cumbersome way of doing things. In fact, any pattern-based system, I think has its drawbacks. I mean, if the cage system works for you, then fine. I'm not criticising you on that. It's just that for me, it seems a little bit of a long way around to get to find the places on the neck to play and where to put your fingers, basically. And any patterns-based system is, I think, always going to be just that little bit once removed from what you're actually doing, which is making choices about notes. I've taught pattern-based ways of viewing the neck many times in the past, and they do have their place, as a way of kind of getting those shapes into muscle memory, and, so you can start to see the actual hands-on physical relationships on the fretboard. But at some point, I think it just makes sense to do it the easier way, really, which is to think in terms of the actual notes that you're playing. Here's some information.
Here is the explanation.
Right, so what we've got here is our old friend, the circle of fifths. When I did a video about this, a little while ago, a few weeks ago, I said it's one of the things that tends to crop up in many, many different situations. And what its main use is in those situations is to show you how closely or distantly related any two musical entities are. If you're not sure about the circle of fifths, let's just ignore the smaller writing there in red and look at the larger letters there. Starting at the 12 o'clock position, you can see I've got C, and going clockwise, if I do a C major scale, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, the fifth note of that scale is G, and then I'll do a G major scale, and the fifth note of that is a D, and the fifth note of a D major scale is an A, the fifth note of an A major scale is an E, and so on. And eventually you get round to an F major scale, and the fifth note of F major is a C note. So you've gone full circle, hence the circle, because you're going full circle, and it's the fifth note of each scale each time, the circle of fifths. So you get like a wheel of keys there. Just to kind of show both sides of the coin, in red I've shown the relative minors. Every major key has a relative minor. Every major pentatonic has a relative minor pentatonic. Same notes, just viewed from a different viewpoint, if you like. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a little bit of a look at the notes that are in a C major pentatonic. They are the notes of C, D, E, G and A. Right, okay, and that's also an A minor pentatonic. One way that you can remember that is spell it backwards, okay? Go from the C and then go to an A, then a G, then an E, then a D. You've spelt the word caged. You know, those, it's not really connected with a caged system. It just happens to be that those are the five notes in a C major pentatonic or A minor. So you can use that to locate where notes are on the neck. If you find a C note and walk down one of those five pentatonic boxes from a C, you will be spelling the word caged. So you can, you know, the next note down from a C is going to be an A, the next note down from an A is going to be a G, and so on. Anyway, let's say we wanted to, whatever pattern of C major pentatonic, A minor pentatonic we were using, let's say we wanted to change that to a G major or E minor pentatonic without moving to a different position on the neck. Well, let's have a look at the notes in a G major E minor pentatonic. You can see that the notes in question are G, A, B, D and E. Or put another way, just take the C note that's in the C major pentatonic and change it to a B. And yes, the notes are in a different order, but they are still 4 out of 5 the same notes. The C note has just changed to a B. To go to a D major pentatonic, all you'd need to do is change the G note in a G major or E minor pentatonic to an F sharp, and you've got the D major, B minor. You can see the pattern emerging now, can't you? Just take the root note of the scale, the D, in the case of the D major pentatonic, and drop it down a semitone. That's going to make it into a C sharp, and if you do that, you have the A major, F sharp minor pentatonic. Take the A note in that scale, drop it down to a G sharp, as in just taking it down one semitone, and you have the E major or C sharp minor pentatonic. And, you know, there's the B major G sharp minor. You can see all I've done is I've taken the E note that's in E major C sharp minor, and I've dropped it down to a D sharp. The rest of the notes remain the same, and we end up with the B major G sharp minor. And you can just walk that round the entire circle there. And if we go back to, if we kind of, you know, it's just changing one note each time. And if we get to the F major or D minor pentatonic, that's F, G, A, C and D. Well, if you take that F note and reduce it by one semitone to become an E, you're back at the C major pentatonic once again. So you can move from one pentatonic to another just by changing one note. That's easier, in principle, I would argue, than having to think about, okay, let's wipe the board clean of that pattern that I'm using for C major and think of a new pattern that I need to use for G major or F major. You know, doing it the sort of way where you're thinking in terms of patterns, it necessitates that you kind of discard one pattern and replace it with another pattern. Whereas if you're just thinking of moving one note, that's easier than moving two notes on each string across the whole fretboard, which is what you're doing when you're changing from one pattern to another. The trick is, of course, to know where those notes are on the fretboard. Well, once again, let's just recap on that. Okay, as I was saying earlier, if you know that the notes in a C major or A minor pentatonic, if you walk backwards or down the scale from a C note, spell the word caged, then you can use that as a way of locating where notes are on the fretboard. So here's the obvious pattern. That first position pentatonic, this is a C note here. You know, most people know the E strings pretty well, because certainly this E string here is where you kind of locate a lot of your bar chords and stuff. And obviously if this is an E, this is an E, and therefore if that's a C, this is a C. So we know that this is a C note. Okay, so I'm just going to walk down that pattern, and it's going to go C, A, G, E, and D. C, A, G, E, D, caged. And then it begins again here. C, A, G, E, D, C, A. Next pattern. Okay, well this C note here is still a C note. It hasn't changed since we were playing it as part of that pattern. So now let's walk down what I would call position number 2. It's going to go C, A, G, E, D. C, A, G, E, D, C. Okay. Let's have a look at the next pattern. Okay, this does sort of rely on the assumption that you do know your 5 pentatonic box shapes. So if you don't know them, then let's, kind of put in a bit of practice on those. But let's assume you know them. Well, we know that the 12th fret on the E string is an E note. Okay, so just taking that C, A, G, E, D, C, A, G, E, D cycle, this is an E, this is a D. Then we're on to the C. C, A, G, E, D, C, A, G, E, D. This E note here is still an E note, since we used it in this pattern. So we're going to go E, D, C, A, G, E, D, C, A, G, E. And then this one here, well, we can figure out that this is an A note because it's at the 17th fret on the E string. That's the same as the 5th fret, it's just an octave higher. And those of us who are old enough to remember tuning the A string to the 5th fret on the E string, we know that 5 frets above an E, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we have an A note. So we can go A, G, E, D, C, A, G, E, D, C, A, G. So just kind of walking through that C, A, G, E, D, just find a reference point to kind of put a stake in the ground and walk from there. And you can find, for instance, where an E note is. C, A, G, E. Okay, well, as we saw in that little slideshow, if you want to go from an A minor C major pentatonic to an F major D minor pentatonic, all you've got to do is swap out the E note for an F note, which is always going to be 1 fret higher. So doing that, I'll go C, A, G, E, oh, there's the F there, D, C, A, G, E, there's an F. So this pattern becomes this pattern. And that's what I'm thinking when I'm changing with the chord changes. I'm not thinking in terms of one pattern to another. I'm just thinking about that E needs to go up to an F, or up in this pattern here, this E needs to go up to an F. This E needs to go up to an F, like that. I'm just looking for the notes that define one scale turning into another. And if you get into this way of thinking, boy, will your fretboard knowledge get a turbo boost. And, it's the old thing, you can either memorize stuff parrot fashion and just rote learn it, in which your head kind of pretty soon gets full of stuff that you've memorized, and often, you confuse one shape with another shape and so on, and that way lies confusion. Or you just get an understanding of it, and it's like a weight being lifted. You can just, if you understand what you're doing, You don't have to put the effort into trying to dredge around in the dusty corners of your mental filing cabinets to find what was that scale pattern again? Was it this one or was it this one? No, it just presents itself to you on the neck. Hopefully I've made a good case for a little bit of fretboard knowledge there and how it can be helpful. So now you know what to do. Go away and have some fun with it. So hopefully that made some kind of sense. And as always, there will be, by the time this video goes out, a full tab for the solo at the top of the video in both Guitar Pro and PDF formats, along with a clip of me playing the solo, that explanation you've just seen there, the jam track to play along with, and a PDF of that sort of circle of fifths showing all of the notes in each pentatonic, just as a reference guide for you to see which note you need to change and, when going from one scale to another. Most chord changes that you'll come across, I find, and I meant to mention this in the explanation clip, most chord changes that you'll play over will be, going one step round that circle of fifths a lot of the time. Not every time, but maybe sometimes you might need to go two steps, so you need to think about changing two notes. But the closer any two entities are in that circle, keys, chords, pentatonics, okay, the closer any two entities are in that circle, the more closely they're related, and therefore the more likely you're going to see them together in a piece of music. So, two chords which are closely related or close together on that circle will tend to be in close proximity in a chord sequence. So that's why I think it's handy to think of it in that circle of fifths manner. Hopefully you'll get something from that yourself. But that is the video for today, folks. Hope you found that useful, informative, and possibly even entertaining. And if that's the case, please hit the subscribe button and the notification bell if you haven't already done so. And why not drop me a like as well while you're at it. Don't forget the live stream every Friday, 5 PM UK time, regular as clockwork. We just have a beer and a chat because it's Friday and it's time for a beer and a chat. It's a great way to kick off the weekend, and I'd love to see you there if you can make it. But for now, I'll bid you all a good day and say thank you so much for watching. Thank you for your time. Look after yourselves, folks. Stay well, stay safe, and above all, stay sane. Bye for now.